The oldest form of communication we have with each other are narratives. We tell, if you go back and you look at the ancient stories, Gilgamesh, Beowulf, every single civilization out there has an origin narrative story. So we all understand things a little bit better, I think, when there's an emotional element to it.
Welcome to the When I Grow Up podcast, where we talk about what people wanted to do when they grew up, what they do now, and how they got there. And today's guest, Kevin, has had many careers and many experiences in his life that he would tell you were jobs he loved. And yet it wasn't the big, grand experiences of becoming a photographer or working in marketing or working as an author that really met the need that he had to find purposeful work. It was working with kids in an elementary school, helping them learn how to use Microsoft Office. So let's talk to Kevin today and hear more about his story of how he moved from wanting to be an astronaut to helping kids explore and understand the world of computers. Let's dive in. Hey, Kevin, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you here. And one of the first things that I always love asking people when we start off the podcast is, what is it that you wanted to do when you grew up?
Well, first off, not get old, but that wasn't, successful, apparently. What I wanted to do, it's funny you asked me this because I just got back from a 4-day vacation in Orlando where we went to the Kennedy Space Center, and I wanted to be an astronaut. I still do.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to being able to get off this rock eventually, but yeah. But then I had found out I had to wear these.
Yes.
And that kind of killed all that. So yeah, I wanted to be an astronaut, but I'm not good at math, which is also oops.
That does play into it. It's funny though, because I remember having a conversation early on where I suspected that my son was colorblind, and somebody says, "Oh, well, they can't be a pilot then because of eyesight and things like that." And I thought, "Oh, I never would have thought of stuff like that early on." So what do you do? What do you do now?
What I do now is actually I teach elementary school students how to use Microsoft Office.
So tell me more about it, because it sounds pretty straightforward, but teaching elementary school students to use Office, I don't know that I would have put those two together.
Well, it really became much more important after the COVID panic because we had a lot of kids working. All the classes were done virtually. My wife is a middle school math teacher, and she did the last half of, the 2021, 2020 semester, I forget which, virtually. And it was quite a challenge. Having kids being able to understand how to communicate using Microsoft Word, Microsoft PowerPoint. We don't do a lot in Excel, thank goodness. But it's both a vital life skill these days and a vital business skill.
Yeah, absolutely. What age group are you talking when you say elementary? Are we even kindergartners are learning, or what's the?
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Kindergartners get laptops with touchscreens, and I'm teaching them how to type using a typing program. Whereas like my fifth graders are doing 8-slide presentations on where they want to go for vacation. So it's that whole. We're really, the idea is that we're preparing them, for the workplace is what it really did when it gets right down to, which is great. I'm totally in favor of this. I'm a Mac person, so I'm not necessarily happy that we're doing it on Windows computers, but you bend some places, you break some places.
That's fair. It's funny because I remember when I was growing up, all of the computers in the school were Macs. They were just all the Mac computers. So it's funny that it's switched over to PC and Windows and everything.
Well, I learned carriage return. So that tells you how old I am.
That's fair. You surprised me. I would have expected like not the carriage return, but the just good old like DOS type kind of stuff. But
I did that too for a while. I was the first among my friends to have a computer in my house, which made me, of course, king nerd. So yeah, I did a lot of computer work, but I found that while computers are fun to use, and I'm speaking to you one right now, but the analytical side of computers never really appealed to me much. The programming which is essentially a long math equation. You'll get right down to it. But the minute I discovered digital photography, bam, everything took off.
Mm. So tell me about so obviously you're teaching elementary students now how to use Microsoft Office, but how did you end up where you are? Tell me that journey from from astronaut to teaching.
Convoluted
That's
and
okay. I
filled with
like windy paths. It's okay.
yeah, and filled with many, many, many mistakes.
Fair.
I tell people I like grade 11 so much I took it twice. Discovered early, about grade 9 I was always the lonely kid dreaming. I was like, 5 foot even, 110 pounds in a high school that sent 3 players to the NHL. So I was
Wow.
not, necessarily the big man on campus. I was always the person buried with their nose in a book. And so when I was about in grade 10, I discovered Dungeons and Dragons,
Mhm.
which was good from an imagination perspective, bad from a getting schoolwork done perspective.
That's
So
fair.
I took grade 11 twice. But that background really gave me a sense of being able to tell a narrative and tell a story, because Dungeons and Dragons and other role-playing games, when you get right down to it, are interactive fiction, the
Yeah.
original interactive fiction.
Yeah,
So
and
I'm kind of
improv
did that.
and yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. Did that, and that kind of ruled my life for about 10 years. And then I started work just to have a job in a camera store. And I realized, oh, I like this. This is fun. This feeds both my creative side, my storytelling side, and my technical side. Whenever you do those,
Mhm.
personality tests for any new job and they want to know what makes you tick, I score almost right down the middle with both 50-50 analytical and technical. So I said, I want to be a photographer. Thank goodness nobody ever told me, no, it's almost impossible to be a commercial photographer because everybody wants to be one. But, nobody ever told me that, so I didn't know it was impossible.
Mhm.
So I had a 10-year career as a commercial photographer, did assignments all over the world, Ecuador, Costa Rica, had
Mhm.
IBM, Sports Illustrated. And then I got
Mhm.
into it, and my niche that I really developed was fast turnaround of film, regular old film. And then
Oh.
digital photography happened. And that was really, really fast. Anybody could do that niche. And I said,
Mhm.
okay, that's it. I'm out. So I went to internet marketing, and then did internet marketing for a bunch of companies there for a while as well, and started writing a lot on a blog.
Mhm.
If you've got, I really recommend to this day blogging. I still do it for a
Yeah.
couple of reasons. Number one, if you like the therapy of keeping a journal, it has all those advantages. Number one. Number two, I call it intellectual prototyping, where you have, oh, that's a good idea. I
Mm.
should write that down. Well, there's your opportunity to write it down. And more importantly, I consider blogging to be like, standing at the plate in baseball and the count is 3-2. What do you do
Mm.
when you foul off every pitch that gets thrown your way? You keep swinging at every pitch because who knows, you
Mhm.
might make contact. And that's what
Mhm.
blogging does for the intellectual process. It really, and even if you're, a podcaster, a YouTuber,
Yeah.
whatever, just foul off those pitches. You may knock one out of the park. But that then led to about a 7-year career as a full-time writer. And then that ended in October, and now I teach.
Wow. Okay, so teaching is new to what to all of those other pieces, but you yes, very windy, a whole bunch of different experiences. Have
Yeah.
you have you found that you take things from each of them that
Oh,
you
yeah,
enjoy?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Teaching is new to me, but my wife's been a middle school math teacher for, oh gosh, almost 30 years now. So,
Mhm.
I have her to rely on, and, and help with the processes, because bureaucracies and me do not get along well. And school is nothing but one big bureaucracy. But yeah, absolutely. You know, I think the oldest form of communication we have with each other are narratives. We tell, if you go back and you look at the ancient stories, Gilgamesh, Beowulf, every single civilization out there has an origin narrative story. So we all understand things a little bit better, I think, when there's an emotional element to it. So getting my kids to, a perfect example, I said, tell them, I have a lot of kids, especially in the second and third grade, who type like chickens, like that. They hunt and peck. And I said, guys, it's going to be a lot faster if you bring 8 other friends to the party.
Hmm.
And, oh, okay, yeah, and because it's a more rural district, the minute I say type like chickens, bam, everybody gets it.
Yeah.
They know because they all have
Hmm.
seen chickens going around. So, yeah, it's, I like to think that I can be, everybody's got that one teacher that says, that teacher changed my life. And I like to think that maybe someday, 20 years after I'm dead, one of my kids is going to go, yeah, Mr. Creighton really made a big impact on me. I think that's what all teachers like to think will happen.
Yeah. It's been in so many of my episodes that been recording already, I have talked with people about the influence of teachers and just how much their influence can direct the interests and the imagination and the confidence of kids to go, "Oh, maybe I could do this thing."
Hmm.
And it sounds like for you, you had all of these different dreams and experiences, and you were able to pursue those too.
Yeah, and looking back on it, I had 2 teachers who really changed my life. The first was Mr. Woods. He was my 11th grade the first time, English teacher. And he was the English teacher you didn't want to get. Imagine, I don't know if in the movies at all, Ving Rhames, the actor, short, big African
Mhm,
American dude, but he had a Jamaican accent. And he
mhm.
was the English teacher nobody wanted to have, but he turned me on to Shakespeare. Yeah, we watched Macbeth, and I understood at a core level the tragedy of this force of nature, this Scottish thane trapped into by events that he can't break out of. Like, okay, I get that, I understand that, and it really stirred the passion of the English language in me. And the second one was my 12th grade chemistry teacher, Mr. Turner, who taught me that you can be a person of faith and a person of intellect at the same time, that the two don't necessarily have to clash. And that was a big revelation to me, and a very, very comforting one, that I could indulge both of those sides of my nature, and they don't have to fight each other.
That's interesting because I've heard that a couple of times as you've been telling your story that you have very dichotomous experiences that you're able to find connection with your faith and intellect, your um, analytical and technical. There seems to be that theme through your story of I have both sides that I'm able to find a connection for them. Is that
Yeah,
true?
yeah, I never thought of it that way, but yeah, there's, uh, I find, conformity is pretty boring. I'm not necessarily the person that fits in well with the crowd. Although I desire to fit into the crowd. Once again, I contain multitudes. I am. There's a line from, oh, who was it? And I had it a while back, and now it's gone. But the idea was that uh, maturity is the ability to hold 2 conflicting opinions in your mind at the same time and
Mhm.
understand they both could be right.
Mhm.
So that's kind
Yep.
of my view on life.
Yeah, I've heard that I couldn't tell you who said it, but I am familiar with the at the very least with the concept of
I
that
want to say
quote.
it's Fitzgerald, but I think I'm wrong.
Mm. I could look it up and include it in the show notes
Yeah, we
later.
could.
I'm
Well, and
happy
that
to do
and
that.
that's yeah, that's the biggest thing I see with the kids that I teach. Although it
Mhm,
is kind of coming back. Is that when you said I could look it up,
mhm,
getting kids to understand when they're sitting in front of a computer that they're literally are a few keystrokes away to the greatest storehouse of knowledge that we've seen in our human existence
mhm.
is a challenge. I have never not been curious.
Hmm,
And thanks to God, both of my kids are very curious. So and I dated I married a curious wife. So that's not
yeah.
not a coincidence. But the getting them, well, how do I do this? We'll just look it up. And you'd watch the
Mhm,
head, the gears inside their head just grind to a halt, and a little bit of smoke come out of their ear, and like, look it up. I said, yeah, you're sitting in front of a computer. Type in, how do I do a transition in PowerPoint? And they go, oh, I can do that. Yes, you can. There's a lack of curiosity right now that really bothers me, because that means that there's going to be a
hmm.
surplus of just accepting what you're told. And that's the problem.
Sure, I gotcha. I'm I'm also really curious, one thought that came to mind when you were talking about the work that you do with your kids, and I imagine that some listeners might hear your story and go, "Oh, you were a photographer and you were a writer and all these things, and those sound so grand. And now you're a teacher, and you're like, but I really love this work." And so I want you to speak to the listeners who may feel like the big grand job is the one that's supposed to be the one that you love versus the one, and it's not that teaching isn't a grand job. I want to be very clear, but
Yeah.
perceptually speaking, there's a difference there.
Okay, so I'm going to get all faithful on you here right now.
That's okay.
There's a verse in the Bible, Philippians 4:13. It's quoted very often. It's I can do
Mhm.
all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Mhm.
But it's you usually see it like overhead
Yeah.
in the locker room as they're about to go outside in the football field. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Yeah. But what they miss is the context of that verse, because the first two
Yeah.
the verses before that, Paul says, "Look, I'm not complaining. I've
Mhm.
had good times and I've had bad times. I've been rich and I've been poor. I've been had a lot of friends and I've been by myself. I've been doing this and I've been in prison. It's all cool. I can
Mhm.
do all things through Christ who strengthens me." And that's kind of, you keep the main thing,
Mhm.
and it doesn't really matter what you do. And when I was working in marketing, I didn't really like it all that much, but I blogged and I
Mhm.
had that outlet. Is teaching my favorite thing in the world to do? No, quite frankly, not. Does it pay the bills? Yeah, it does. Is it really bad? No, I've had some really bad jobs. I've had some really bad jobs surrounded by people who shared my passions,
Yeah.
who you would think would be on my side. And my two worst jobs were both in industries that I really wanted to be in, but I was
Mhm.
surrounded by really lousy people.
It makes a
Um,
difference.
it makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think you make such a good point about there's a couple of things that matter in that. There's the perspective that matters, how we're looking at things, how we're approaching our daily work, our daily way that we do life, and also the environment that we're in. The environment makes such a big difference to what we experience in our work. You could do the same job in two different settings, and one of them you love what you do, and the other you hate what you do. And it's not the job, it's the setting. And that can be very
Absolutely.
true.
It's I thought I wanted this. I've had two jobs that I thought I wanted really, really bad. They were there's a line from Thoreau that says, um, the mass of men lead lives of quiet of desperation. And later on in Walden, he says, but it is a character of wisdom not to do desperate things.
Hmm.
And I went, oh, Walden has
Mhm.
definitely been one of my books, my touchstone books that changed me a lot. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear that you're very inspired by all that you've read. Um, is you have absorbed knowledge your whole life,
That's a,
right?
that's a polite way of saying I'm a nerd, but yes, go ahead, continue.
I'm a nerd too. It's okay. I'm a
Yeah,
board game geek. I'm a nerd. I'm
yeah,
all the
yeah,
pieces too. I gotcha.
yeah.
I didn't even I didn't even think about it being, D&D that you did early on, and but it's funny because I always love to connect the parts of our past, the parts of maybe more childhood experiences into what we end up doing. And as silly as it may sound, I think that storytelling is your theme in a lot of ways
Yeah,
because
yeah.
the parts of the work that you have loved are the parts that have allowed you to experience or tell stories or to help others find their stories. Like when you're working with kids in elementary school, I'm going to guess that the favorite parts are the times when kids have those kind of light bulb moments of believing
Oh,
in what they can do,
yeah,
right?
yeah. It's what we live for. I
Yeah.
was 29 years of living. My wife's taught for 30 years. We've been married for 29 years. Tomorrow, actually.
Congratulations.
Thank you. When she comes home and she talks about the kids who get it, you just see that glow that comes on her face, and she's like, yes, this is why I do this. Or when the kid comes back, 3 years afterwards, you see him in the grocery store. I loved your class. It was so much fun. She's like, yeah, that's why I do it.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I am a firm believer in anytime a person has a moment where they think of an old teacher that they had that influenced them, it's worth sending a message to the teacher because every teacher I know wants to hear it. So, mhm, yeah. Well, I have appreciated having you here today. I want to take a moment too and ask, are there ways that listeners can be following you, connecting with you? Are there things that you want to share that you're either working on or have worked on that people can find of yours?
Well, the best way to follow me would be kevincreighton.com and also on Facebook at Kevin Creighton Author. I have a personal page and a work page. I'm a big believer in the separation of church and state. The personal page has got my personal stuff.
Yeah.
The work page has got my work stuff.
Yep.
That's going on. And then I also, part of that storytelling thing is 5 years ago I had an idea for a book, a novel, and I said, "Oh, that's a good idea. I should write that down," and I did. And then it kind of sat there gestating for a few years. And then my good friend John Gabriel, who I've known, since the Bush administration, the first one, he
Mhm.
said he knocked out his novel in 2 years, and I'm like, okay, you shame me into it. Fine, I'll write. And I wrote I've just finished my first novel back in November. It's called Salvation, and it's very similar. You write what you know.
Yeah.
So I wrote a book about a member of the military. I never served, but I've been around enough military people in my life to get a good idea, and I've had access to. I mean, when you carry on a day-long conversation with, former member of Delta Force, you get an idea of what
Yeah.
they're done. I've done that multiple times.
Mhm.
But it's a story about a man who's trying to find peace after living in an uneasy world, and become a normal person, whatever that is, in Southwest Florida. So it's gotten really good reviews, and some of them even are not from my mom, which is amazing, so
Well, that's
uh,
good.
it's something I'm quite proud of, something I enjoy doing,
Yeah.
because in a way it's the culmination, like you say, of that storytelling thing, that it brings that interactive fiction that I started off with D&D, and the journey of faith that I've gone through myself personally, and a lot of my nerdery, some of my habits, and it kind of integrates them all into one thing. I wrote the book I wanted to read, and if somebody else
Yeah.
likes it, hey, that's a bonus for me. But I think it's a pretty good book.
That's awesome. I That sounds really exciting. I will also check it out because it sounds like a beautiful story that you've written. So
Yeah,
thank you.
and one of the reasons why I wrote it was I grew up reading, like, Robert B. Parker Spencer series, which have been turned into multiple movies and TV shows and stuff like that. And I grew up reading James Bond now, and all these great, two-fisted heroic people trying to live honorably in a dishonorable world. And I didn't see that tradition being passed on to this next generation. I have two sons, they're 20 and 22. And I wanted to write something for them that 3-4 years down the road, they could read and say, oh, that's how I'm supposed to act.
Hmm.
That's how we get rid of toxic masculinity by showing positive masculinity. We show that some things have to matter outside yourself. And that idea is just missing right now. And that scares the heck out of me.
Wow, what an incredible journey Kevin has been on throughout his life. Being in so many different careers really shows that it's not always what you do, but it's the interwoven themes to why you do it that really matter. And for Kevin, it was always about stories. Now, one last thing I want to add is if you are interested in buying a copy of Kevin's book, you can also find it on Amazon by searching for Kevin Creighton with the book title Salvation. If you found this episode helpful or want to share it with a friend, please do so. Please feel free to share, like, subscribe, all of those fun bits. And if there's a job out there that you want to know more about, leave a comment and let me know. Whether it's a pilot or an archaeologist or an astronaut, let me know who you want me to try to find for this show, and I will do my absolute best to find them for you. Take care, guys.